So welcome to the first lecture. Thanks for signing up. We're just going to go through a couple things real quick. So some introductions, logistics, objectives, and then we're going to get right into the lecture and demo. First of all, I'm Sophie.
And I'm Zach.
And we are your course instructors for this semester. And then we have a couple of TAs. There are going to be more of them, but I forgot to add their pictures. So it'll be like a little surprise when you pop into their office hours. But this is our sub-team lead, Emily. This is Justin, and then that's Ram. And so let's go through some logistics. So this is the course code. You guys should already be enrolled. Has anyone had any issues enrolling in this section? Okay. Then I would also double check that you enrolled for 602 specifically, because any other section would be like intro to iOS or backend. So definitely make sure you're in the right section. This is up to 2 credits. So even if you're enrolled for only 1 due to like the credit limit, you're expected to do 2 credits of work. And it is pass fail, so you need 70 points to pass. And we have the full syllabus up on the website, which you guys should all have access to. We sent it out in an email. And then here are some deadlines. If you haven't added yet, the deadline is the 18th and the drop deadline is November 10th. So if it turns out that you are failing this course, we'll let you know, and hopefully you won't end up with a U on your transcript. And then some of our policies, you have 6 slip days. You can use 2 of them max per assignment. So definitely spread those out. They're there for you to use. So yeah. In terms of coursework, we have 6 lectures, 6 assignments, some bonus lectures, and we have some extra credit as well. And then we'll go over the hack challenge later in the semester, but this is a required event and it counts for 20% of your grade. So we have 6 assignments, as I said. I think these weights have been changed, so refer to the syllabus for the updated versions. But yeah, there are going to be 6 assignments. It's pretty much due weekly. So make sure you're keeping an eye on those deadlines. And we do have office hours to help out with you guys if you need any help on those assignments. Note that participation is 10% of your points. So you're going to get that through coming to lecture. We are going to be tracking attendance. So just make sure you are accounting for that. Okay. So here are your responsibilities. So today, again, check your enrollment. Make sure you have access to the materials you need. The textbook, the ed, the ed, that should have come out a couple of days ago. And then every week in lecture, we're going to have attendance Kahoots. Today, we do not have a Kahoot. We have a fun Google form. So, yeah. And then make sure you're getting those assignments done. If you do need any help, again, go to the ed, go to office hours, and we have lectures and demos. They're going to be recorded in the textbook, and there's also past year's lectures and demos in case you need extra supplemental materials. Okay, so in terms of the actual course, we want to give you hands-on experience working with Android, and we want to give you kind of like a working portfolio for your resume. So you are going to have like a project that you can put on your resume at the end of this course, and that is going to be through the hack challenge. So definitely make sure that you are putting your best into all of these assignments. They're going to be things that you can maybe talk about in your interviews if they ask about projects that you've done. And then we also are going to be able to give you materials and resources for further study in case you want to go a little bit deeper than the topics that we cover in class. Yes, academic integrity, very serious. We are sponsored by Walker Wright. He takes this very seriously. So though we allow you to do internet searches, make sure you're not plagiarizing code, make sure you're not doing partner work. All of these assignments are individual. So keep that in mind. This is an official course, even though it's student run. Okay, let's get right into the lecture. So we're going to start with a little bit of Kotlin. Who here has taken 2110 or has some Java experience? Okay, cool. So even if you don't, no worries. You're going to be practicing with Kotlin a lot, so you'll pick it up pretty fast. But the first thing to note is that Kotlin does static typing. So you can declare it like this. So it'll implicitly know that it's a string, or you can just say this variable is going to have a type string. And then another thing is mutability. So in other programming languages, you can change like what the variables are referring to, but in Kotlin, you need to make sure if you want to be able to change the variable later, you need to label it var. But if you want something to stay permanent, so if you want name to remain Leslie, you have to declare it as a val. And then yeah, that's just something to keep in mind throughout your project. Anything to add?
Yeah,
Okay.
and to add a little bit more to this, that's okay. So, the thing about Kotlin, if for anyone who like doesn't have Java experience and might only have something like Python, what you'll notice is that in Python, you have these variables and they could be of any type, right? So you have a variable that could store a string, and then you could just reassign it to store like an integer, right? But with Kotlin is a strongly typed language, which means that these variables, like val name colon string, we wouldn't be able to assign a number to this. So that's like a really important concept, is that it's a strongly typed language. And just to add a little bit more about mutability as well. So even though like vals, they can't be reassigned. So for example, with string, right, we wouldn't be able to do name equals atta. But like, let's say that we had val name was an array, and we wanted to like mutate that array by like pushing a value onto it using like a method based on that array, we would actually be able to do that. But the thing, like the key difference is that we wouldn't be able to reassign that array. So if I had like val numbers equals 1, 2, 3, 4, and I tried saying numbers equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that wouldn't work because we're reassigning it. But if I said like numbers dot add 5, that would work. So that's like a little bit about mutability and typing, but as you code more with Kotlin, you'll start to get like a better hang of this.
Yes. Okay, so continuing with the Kotlin intro, nullability in Java, you can just make a variable null and set it to null whenever you want. But in Kotlin, you need to tell, is it the compiler, that this variable can be null. So right here, you can see that these two are incorrect, but once you add this question mark, then you can assign it to be null. So you need to be able to, you need to mark that this variable can be null. Otherwise, it's gonna give you an error. So this question mark makes a variable nullable. And then in terms of nullability, we have two methods. So these exclamation marks, they basically, it basically it's like you guaranteeing that this variable is not null. So say this name is null, but when you put these exclamation marks here, that you're saying this name is not null, even though it is. So that's why we marked it like unsafe. But if you use this question mark, basically here you're saying name. If it's null, then put default name. Otherwise, you're just gonna print name. So make sure you keep these methods in mind. They're definitely kind of annoying to get used to, especially if you have been using Java or like Python before. But you'll get the hang of it. And these two methods are really going to come in handy once you start dealing with null values.
Right. And to add a little bit on to like the practicality of nullability, like you might be wondering, why do we care if variables are null? Like, what does this have to do with Android, right? Say something like Instagram, when you get an image on your phone, you send a network request. And it's possible maybe you don't have Wi-Fi, maybe like packets are dropped and something fails, right? And in that case, what would that image be? So having these nullable types allows us to basically have like a really powerful invariant where we could say that our image on Instagram that we're trying to load, if we make that data type non-nullable, we know that like even if the network request fails, right, that image variable will never actually be set to null. So if we have that image variable and if it's not in the loading state, we'll always be able to use it. So like nullability can be really practical in a lot of applications. So you'll get to see that as
well. Okay, so now we're getting into, oh man, can I move this? Okay, so we're going to be linking the UI and logic. So once you put these UI elements onto your design page, or your XML file, they're not really going to do anything unless you give logic to them. So like if I were to put this button on my screen, and I clicked it, nothing would happen unless I gave it some logic in the main activity screen. So here, when you're doing find view by ID, you're finding what this button is called, and then you're making it into a variable so that you can like do operations with it. So for example, say I just pulled this button on here, I'm going to name it intent button. And then in my code, if I want this button to do something, I have to first create a reference for it. So I'm going to do button equals, and then I'm going to tell it, find this view by its ID. And since I named it intent underscore button, that's what I'm going to put into here. So that's how you're going to be able to kind of change the data and change the logic of your UI components. And we'll do examples with this. So if this doesn't make sense, no worries. Okay, and then something else to note when you're debugging, we're going to use something called the logcat. So maybe in your coding classes, you've done like system.out.print to kind of see what your program is doing. But in Android, we use logcat so that we can see like messages from your device while it's happening. So log.d, you kind of tag it. So maybe I'll say, if I'm having trouble with a button, maybe I'll put here in the tag, is my button working? And then the message could maybe be yes, if it actually prints. So then once I click on that button, it's going to print out a log message in here. And I'm going to maybe control F, is my button working? Because that's what I put in the tag. And then see like here, button activated, yes. So then you'll see this whole message in your logcat if that button is activated. And if it's not, then you know where your issue is. So in this case, like printing out to your terminal isn't really going to be a lot of help. So that's why we use logcat to kind of see like what's going on in our device while our application is running. Okay, so we are going to do a little bit of an intro to Android Studio. So over here on the side is our project pane. You're going to be able to see all your files. So every screen, all your resources are all going to be on the side. And this is how you're going to kind of navigate through your application. And then here's like the editor. This is where you're going to put in all your logic, all the code basically. The toolbar up here, you're going to be able to use this to run your emulator, which is kind of just like it's like a sample phone basically. Like when you want to test your applications, you're going to have to run it on the phone so that you can kind of see what it looks like. So that's what this toolbar up here is going to help you do. And then the bottom menu bar, you have a lot of different things you can do there. We talked about the logcat, and then there's also like the terminal, there's problems, and then like to-dos. So if you mark your code with to-dos, that's where they're going to pop up and you're going to be able to reference them really quickly. So there's a lot of stuff to kind of get used to, but once you start coding, you'll probably get the hang of it. You will get the hang of it. Okay, views and activities. So activity is just another word for screen. And then a view is kind of like what holds informations in activities. So like your image view, button, text view, like these are all views. So I kind of label them like this is just image view. Like it's just an image, but it's image view because it like kind of holds your information. And then a button is also a view. Text view is also a view. So again, these two are both activities. And yeah. So these are just like terms for things that you've already come into like contact with, but these are the official vocab terms for them. And then something we're going to be using when we are creating your UI is called constraint layout. So essentially when you're pulling these views onto your screen and you're kind of trying to design what your screen looks like and what your activity should display, you're going to want a way to kind of position those items. So the layout that we're going to be using in this class is called constraint layout. Essentially, you're going to position your views in the context of where other views are. So say I just pulled on component A, see how it's like attached to the top and then it's also attached to the side, and then B is attached to A on two sides and then attached to the other side, and then C is like attached to A again. So you're constraining where these views are based on the other views in your activity. And we are going to get some practice with that today. So if this looks really confusing or if it's a little overwhelming, don't worry about it. It's something that you have to kind of do to get used to. Okay. So now getting into designing an activity. So remember how every screen is called an activity. So the UI file associated with that screen is called the XML. So you're going to be able to drag and drop these elements in here. So if I wanted to add this button, there's going to be like a button component on the side, and I'm just going to drag it in and then kind of position it however I want to position it. And that's really like, it's very easy to kind of see what your screen is going to look like before you add any logic to it. So every activity again has two parts. It has the UI and the logic. So you usually start by putting the UI together, and then once you have all those components on your screen, then you go to the logic, use the find view by ID that we talked about, and then start adding code and logic to those components. Okay, so we're gonna go through a quick demo. How many people have Android Studio downloaded already? Okay, cool. So why don't we just make a new project? So if you could open it real quick, it might take a while to open the first time, but that's totally okay. So just go to File, New Project, and then you're gonna click Empty Views Activity, and then just name it whatever you want, and then press Finish. I'm not gonna press Finish because I already have one.
And if anyone needs help with any of this, like, raise your hand and I'll come by and help, like, debug, whatever.
Yeah. Just create a new one. Oh, empty. Yeah. Can everybody see this okay? Oh my goodness. Wait, how do I?
Oh, you can turn on, like, or yeah, it might be better to just turn on the lights on.
Was it fun to store that? Yeah. Okay. This video is gonna be kind of goofy. All right. Okay, so just real quick, going through the Android Studio editor again, I navigated to, so on the side, you can see like I have all my files. These files I did not create, okay? These are like the automatic files that are created when I open this project. So, yeah, you're just gonna go to, so this is your main activity. This is where all the logic's gonna go. But since I actually have like nothing on my UI yet, I can't really find anything by the reference. So I'm gonna go under resources, layout, and then main activity or activity main XML. And then this is basically what my activity looks like. So if I go up here and I press this play button, that's gonna run my emulator. So I'm just gonna run this right now and show you guys what it looks like. Oh my God. Apologies, everyone. Oh, don't look at that. That is really ugly. Sorry, guys. Android Studio takes so long to run. So definitely like, don't worry about it if it's like really slow. But you can see this is like the app that I have right now. All it has is Hello World. There's no functionality, but this is what we're going to start off working with. So let's just let's just put some stuff on it. So I'm going to click here, and then looking at this component tree, this is how you're going to be able to kind of see what views you have. So in terms of the constraint layout, you're always going to start off with one, and then you're going to kind of drag things underneath that constraint layout, and that's how you're going to be able to, like, again, constrain it. So I'm going to delete this real quick, and then I'm just going to add a new one and kind of show you guys how to constrain. So these 4 dots, they're just asking to be constrained. So you're going to pull it to the top, pull it to the bottom, and then you can kind of see on this side, there you go. Like if I click up and down, that's how I'm going to move my object. So I never really want to like move it in here. It's like just much easier to do it on the side. And so what this kind of ensures is that no matter how big your screen is, that's like where the button is going to be like in comparison to the rest of the screen size. So if my screen were to shrink, that button is going to move up because it's like constrained in relation to how big my screen is. So it's more like a ratio and not like a specific like, oh, this button is going to be 50 dp from the bottom. So I'm going to now constrain the sides. Oops. And then I'm going to put it back up, move it side to side. Okay. So now that you guys know kind of how to constrain something, I'm going to make something real quick and then I'm going to try to have you guys replicate it. So plain text is again, it's just for some reason in code, it's called edit text, but when you're like putting it onto your screen, it's called plain text. So just keep that in mind. Edit text, plain text, same thing. So you see how I constrained it to the sides of my text view instead of the side of the screen? This is because I want it to be centered underneath my text view. And then I'm just going to kind of move it a little bit closer. Okay. Is that like cut off? Oh, okay, it's fine. We'll deal with that later. And then I want to put in a button under here. And again, I want it to be centered underneath both of my items. Okay, that didn't work. Is everyone following so far? Does anyone have questions? Okay, very cool. So yeah. Oh no. Oh, I hate Zoom. Resume share. You're so right. Okay, if you guys have Android Studio, I guess play around with it while I try to figure this out. Sorry, guys. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I hope you guys don't try to go back and look at this, but I'll try to like re-explain. Okay, yeah, so I have this text view on here. That was the first thing I put on. So it's just constrained to the main screen. Now, when I add this plain text, I wanted it to be constrained in relation to my text view. So I constrained it to the sides of my text view, and now it's going to be centered. And then same thing with my button. I constrained it to the side of my edit text. So now they're all going to be centered. So if I move this, everything moves with it. And that's kind of like the beauty of constraint layout is that it basically adjusts based on one view if you need it to. So, are there any questions about this? Okay. Is anyone like following along and trying to code this? Okay. Sounds good. So let me know if you need me to go a little bit slower. Okay. So now with the text view, you can kind of see up here, it's called text view. So when I go to my, oh my gosh, I have to move this main activity and say I want to change something about that text view, I'm gonna have to go, wait, in here and do, what do I want to call it? Maybe I want to call it my text view equals find view by ID r.id.text view. So now whenever I change something or whenever I want to change something about my text view, I have to refer to this variable, my text, because that's how I'm going to kind of manipulate the data that's in that text view. Does this make sense? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So in here, oh my God, this is such a nuisance. Okay. In here, say I want to change this text view to have some kind of text when I start this program instead of just saying text view. That means I have to have some kind of logic in my main activity to refer to this text view. So what I'm going to do is create a variable or create a reference to that UI component. I'm going to name it my text. I'm going to specify that it's of type text view. And then I'm going to use find view by ID like we talked about earlier to link that UI component to this logic file. Clear? Yeah.
Is there something you did to make it so that like
All I did was hit enter. So I think that like imports it automatically. But if you ever get that like red with an underscore or underlined red text, that generally means you need to import something. So just hover over the red and then if it says import, import it. But if it's something else, then yeah, you're just gonna have to read that error message and kind of figure it out. Okay. So now if I want to do something to my edit text, let's see. It's called edit text. So the first thing I do is check this ID and then I'm able to reference it in main activity. So let's call this edit text. And then again, I'm going to call it an edit text. So here, if I just type it out and I don't hit enter, I get that like red error. And then here, this is where you have to click import class edit text. And then it's fine. And then I'm going to do find view by ID r.id dot edit text. So now I have something in here. Let's run the app again. So usually I just click this rerun app button. Hang on. And okay, don't look at that. I should have wiped my emulator. Sorry, guys. Oh, wait, I need to share. Ugh. Oh my God. I'm sorry. What did I just close? Oh no. Okay. Sorry, technical difficulties. I just closed my entire project. Apologies, everyone. Where did it go? Ugh. New window. Okay. We're back. So I was trying to share my emulator, but this is not the right screen. But I accidentally closed my entire project. Okay, so I'm running the app again. It's not what I wanted. Okay. My bad, everyone. In the world. Hold on, I'm gonna comment this out. Okay. So now you can see I have these like UI components that I put on earlier, but they're not gonna be able to do anything. So like if I like even if I put something in here and if I click this button, like nothing's gonna happen because I didn't give it any logic. I think it's supposed to be in here. Okay. Let me try that again. Yay. Okay. It's still not going to do anything, but at least I have my references. So let's make a reference for the button too. Okay, don't do what I did. Make sure you put your stuff in the onCreate function. We're gonna probably go through the onCreate function later, but all you need to know is that like when this main activity or when this app launches, everything in the onCreate is gonna get run. So everything outside of it, like that was what was giving me my error. And one thing to note is that this is gonna be like a lot of trial and error for you guys. It's always a lot of trial and error for me. When I took this class, it was like really hard for me because I don't know, I just wasn't used to kind of having to like not really knowing what I was doing and just kind of having to explore and figuring out myself. But that is totally okay. It's totally okay to be overwhelmed. That's why we have office hours, and that's why Zach and I are here to help you. And yeah, I hope seeing me like mess up in lecture makes messing up a lot less intimidating for you guys. because I'm going to be doing it a lot. Okay. Let's do another reference. So for everyone who's following along, is it like going okay? Okay, cool. Okay, so let's see. What do I want to do with this activity? What about when I hit the save button, let's try to make whatever I enter in here appear in the text view. So say I put Sophie. Once I press this button, maybe I want Sophie to be in the text view. So let's make that a goal. We'll see if I can even implement this. I'm a little rusty. Okay. So first of all, I want my text to be your name. So I'm gonna run this. Okay, for some reason it's getting cut off. So what I'm gonna do is go into my XML. I can kind of see that it's like, you can kind of see here that the layout width is like set to a very specific number. But what I want is for it to wrap the content. So whatever I put in that layout or in that text view, I want it to kind of adjust to fit everything. So say I put, okay, and then here are your attributes on the side. So I'm going to look up text. Just kidding. Maybe it's content. Just kidding. Okay. Sometimes you have to look through everything. Oh my gosh. Okay, maybe we can go through this later. But if I try to put something like longer in here, so let me do it programmatically. Okay. So now when I reload, now everything fits. And that's all because I changed the size of this text view to wrap my content. Now, what if I wanted the text view to be as big as the parent? So in this case, the parent is the constraint layout. And you can kind of see that this constraint layout is like, it's this whole screen. Let me zoom out. It's the whole screen. So maybe if I put this as match constraint, it's going to get as wide as its parent, which is the whole screen. And then once I click this, I'm pretty sure it's going to get like as big as the whole screen and the other components are going to get pushed off. Yeah. So when you are making your screens, you want to really be aware of how big you're setting your components to be. We never really want to hard code it in. So if I wanted it to like fit around my text and it wasn't, I wouldn't want to just put 100 into the width component, because then maybe on a different phone, that text is going to be bigger or smaller, and then it's not going to adjust based on that screen size. So make sure you're using like match parent, wrap content, and then yeah, that should really help with getting your components to adjust regardless of whatever is inside of them. Okay, so now that I kind of set the text to, I'm going to set this back to your name. And then now with buttons, something that you can do for buttons is you want it to listen for when a user clicks on it. So here, so my button dot set on click listener. I don't know if this is right. Okay, so now whenever this button is pressed, because it's listening for a click, everything inside these brackets is going to get run. So let's talk through what I want this to do. Basically, whatever I enter into the edit text, once I click this button, I want this text to go into the text view. So something I have to think about is how am I going to get this text out of my edit text, and then how am I going to send it to my text view? So again, we're going to use these references that we've created to kind of get the information out of these views. So let's do this. So once my button is clicked, I want to take whatever is inside my edit text and I'm going to put it into my text view. So maybe I'll do my text.text equals edit text dot text. I don't think I need to do a toString. You know what? Let's see if this works real quick. Fingers crossed, guys. Okay, so then once I clicked on that button, it changed to my name because this edit text, this line of code here is saying whatever is in edit text.text, whatever I put into that edit text, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to assign it to the text in the text view that I created. So say I tried this again. Oh my gosh. And I clicked on this button, it's going to change to Zach. This is so annoying. Does that make sense? Like how that works? Okay. I am going to have you guys try to recreate this screen. And then if you're still having issues, do call Zach and I over and then work on creating these references and also making sure try out experimenting with this button, what you can kind of do with the text. And yeah, try all the different attributes that you can do with these texts or these views. So maybe you can do like my text dot and then kind of see like what else you can do in here. And definitely experiment a little bit because this class is going to be a lot of experimenting. All right. Does anyone need help right now? Okay, we're chilling. I'm just gonna play around with this a little too then. They all have it. Okay, and then one other thing I want to note is if you're exploring on the side, you're gonna see there's like a folder called values. And this is also in your resource folder. So remember, resource layout is where your XML files are, and that's where everything where you can kind of design what your screens look like. And then underneath values, you have strings and you have colors. So with strings, the thing is we don't really want to hard code a string in. So what I was doing earlier with like what I was trying to do earlier was kind of like set the starting text to be something. So right now it just says text view. And like, yes, in my code, I changed it to say your name. But if I take this out when I run my app, it's still going to say text view. So maybe I want to change that to be something different. And the way to kind of do that from your XML file is you find this attribute called text view. So maybe I want to do your name. Is that how it goes? But then you kind of see I'm getting this error, like this hard-coded string, your name, and it says I should be using an @string resource. So that's where you're going to go into your string file, and you can kind of see that there's already a string name called, it's named app name, and the content is called lecture one. So I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to name this initial text view, and then maybe I wanted to say your name. Okay, so now once I go into my activity main XML, instead of using this hard-coded string, I'm going to do @string / initial text view. And what this is supposed to do is if I want to change this string later, and maybe I'm using this string multiple times in my activity or in my app, I don't want to go into every single component and change your name to like, I don't know, maybe I wanted to start off blank, but then I would have to go into every single component, change what this text is, and it's kind of annoying to do all that. So that's why we use this strings.xml and we use this string resource, is so that if I do end up wanting to change it later to something else, like maybe I want everyone's name to be Sophie at first, I can just change it once in here. So this is like a really good practice to get in the habit of doing, because when you're making larger apps and you want to do kind of bigger refactors, maybe like an update to your app, you want to change a couple things that you've already done, this is going to make it a lot easier rather than having to go in and do it all manually. And the name of the game is doing the least amount of work as possible. So definitely utilize your string resources in order to, especially when you're doing your UI layouts. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah. What in the world? Okay. Okay. So does everybody's app work? Yay. Okay, good first lecture. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Um, we've done a lot about, we went over a lot about Kotlin and the static typing, nullability, the mutability. So I want you guys to kind of go home, practice that, practice coding a little bit with it, and then also experiment with some of these components. And then the other thing is your first assignment is due the weekend after fall break. So you have, I don't expect you to work on it over fall break, but Zach and I are going to try to release some like demo code because that project is going to be using a lot of user input. So some seek bars, which are like the little bars that you drag across. But we're going to be posting some of that. So definitely download it, try to run it a little bit on your own. Definitely look at the code, look at how we got it to run because you're going to be implementing that in your project. And then, yeah, can everybody email me your net IDs also, just for attendance purposes? So just send me an email, say, hey, Sophie, I was in class today, blah, blah, blah. And then I can get you guys your points. My net ID is SYM28, just for reference. I'm gonna type it up here. Okay. And thank you guys for coming. First class done. Yay. Woo!